Right. Thank you for this opportunity. Really excited to be talking about this topic, which is quite broad and there's a lot that we can share. I'm really privileged to have a very accomplished panel with me, and it should be really exciting to discuss this topic with them, share our experiences, also interact with you as an audience. The topic itself has three topics hidden inside it. We're talking about zero effort apps. Just a quick check. How many of you already have created zero effort apps? Quite a few of you. And then these days you hear about zero coding companies. I should have even worded that as zero employee companies. Is there anybody who owns a zero employee company already? Yeah, one at least. Hopefully by next year when we have AADevCon, I'm sure we'll have a lot more. And then the third aspect of it is about zero attention. And since we are talking before lunch, I'm sure the attention part is just for the topic and not for anything else. So what we will do is we will talk about the zero effort apps, which has created a lot of excitement and heartburn as well. How is that changing the speed at which we develop software? How is that changing the structure with which we develop software? And then we'll move to zero effort companies as well. Do any of you have digital colleagues? Okay, no. You have, but you haven't called them digital colleagues. All of you have. So we'll talk about digital colleagues and humans and colleagues. Do you coexist with each other? Do you coordinate? I'm talking about agents. Do you coordinate agents? Do you collaborate with them? Do you compete with them? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about attention. This is a topic we picked because almost 10 years back you looked at attention is all you need, that transformative paper on transformers, right? So now, close to 10 years, there's something interesting happening. Earlier, that paper was written when we needed a lot of compute attention in terms of compute power to process all the tokens. The token economy now, and with the abundance of compute that's been created, the scarcity has shifted elsewhere, in the sense the human attention has become more scarce. One of the speakers that I heard long back said, close to 10 years back, he said, the costliest piece of real estate is on your phone. Which means if I can get 1 centimeter square on your phone, that's the costliest piece of real estate. Now I can dare say that the costliest piece of real estate is in your brain, right? In the sense, if I can get a piece of your attention, that's something that all of us would crave for. So we'll talk about all of that. There are a lot of interesting things to share, and there's a lunch to share as well, so you can talk to us even during lunchtime. If we run out of what we want to share, of course, I'll come to you in between as well. So let's start with zero effort apps, or the ability to create apps without even writing code. I'm not talking about no-code apps, which created a lot of excitement recently. Maybe I'll start with Karrtik. Just a disclaimer, everything that we shared so far or going ahead is our individual opinions as professionals. Not necessarily does it reflect the organization or their thought process. So let's start with to all other subjective areas where AI has made a big difference. Why do you think what do you think is different about zero effort apps, or the ability to create apps with no effort?
Thanks. Am I audible? I think before I move on there, I think I still feel the attention is all you need is still valid. The attention is coming to your question on why zero effort apps has taken such a big kind of news room right now space is if you look at it, one of the belief, and we as humans always want to invest in an area where the risk is more manageable, etc. Right? And one of the key hypotheses is that coding in many ways is verifiable. In the sense that you can verify the software whether it is doing what it is supposed to do. So if you look at it, even the fundamental algorithms in AI, if you look at reinforcement learning with rewards, or for that matter what we are trying to do with all the coding agents, etc. I think one of the major reasons why we are investing heavily out there is because we believe what we want the software to do, we can get it to verify and kind of ensure that it is doing what it is supposed to do. I think that's one of the major reasons why lot of discussions around zero effort and why we are wanting to build zero effort tests, because I think we feel like the coding is one area where, again, it's an assumption that we have very good test cases, we know what we want. Obviously, whether these assumptions are true or not is secondary, but given those assumptions, I think we feel that, okay, coding is one area where at least risk-wise, it's very easy to adopt AI, right? If you know what you want, if there are test cases to test how it should look like, I guess it's one of the good areas to invest the AI's output to see whether it is doing what it is supposed to. So, in my belief, that is one of the reasons why AI in coding or zero effort apps has kind of, you see a lot of progress, and not only in the agentic world, even the core algorithms. If you look at it, lot of algorithms are reward-based algorithms. In the sense, if you know what you want, then you train the models or the AI based on the rewards. And if you get it right, the model gets a reward. And then again, there are other challenges around reward hacking and all those things comes into picture. But I think the reason is there's a way to verify, and hence the coding area has kind of taken a very big leap of faith in trying out AI in this area.
Thanks, Karrtik. What that means is everything that we have to discuss about the way apps are developed. It's a measurable area, which means the progress also will be more solid, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of exciting things happening there. Since I use the word exciting, I think for this aspect, when we look at zero effort apps, what are you excited about in terms of possibilities? Maybe Aditi, you can jump in on this.
Sure. First of all, glad to be here. So there's a lot of excitement, right? Because for so long we have treated coding as like a magical thing. If you can code, you can build businesses around it. If you can code, you can do so much. And now you can see that with companies coming in with zero effort. I won't personally call it zero effort because I know the effort still goes on in making sure that system is working as expected. And Karrtik mentioned knowing what you want, and trust me, developers don't always know what exactly they have to test, right? So it's a very difficult thing if you want to scale that on a production level. But to begin with, it's very exciting. It's exciting because so many people can have now their own things, right? PMs don't have to write specs. They can just create a layout and share it with their developer teams. You can do the prototyping so fast. There's so many companies who build it within like a 2-day thing, do the customer validation, and then ship it. Right, so the whole cycle with which change can come in industry, that has reduced, and I think that is very exciting. So you can see a lot of great things happening very fast. So that excites me.
So what's exciting you is the speed, right?
Yeah, it's the speed, and it's also like everyone has now that kind of magical power to build something, right? It's like you have something in your thought and you create it out. So creating it has become easier. So now everyone is a creator. Just like when blogging platforms came, people could write, right? They could share their things. Today, if they have an idea in their head around something they want in action, they can actually code it out. So I think that excites. Yeah.
If I could add to what Aditi is saying, I think what's exciting is that we as humans are always full of ideas. Earlier, without the access to this fundamental AI or the foundational AI now, which has become very accessible to everybody now, right? Now nobody has to worry about building that foundational AI, which is very costly, which takes quite a bit of time, quite a bit of data, etc. Now the phase that we are going through is, okay, we can do quite a bit of engineering scaffolding around the AI. So now the AI is already being built by the few people or few companies in the world, and now we are in the phase of, okay, we have a lot of these ideas which we always wanted to try, and now everybody is empowered to try that idea. So now testing your idea becomes much more easier and faster. So that's what has become exciting as such. How fast can you get your idea on the table? Because a lot of time there is gap in the visualization that you have in your head while you're communicating, etc. Right? So I think that is what is becoming exciting. Like you can see your idea immediately and kind of talk about it in a much more meaningful way.
Okay. So if I actually put together what both of you said, the way we develop software, the structure or the life cycle or the process that we use in developing software, that's changing. The speed at which we are converting ideas to software, that's changing. The effort which we are using to change ideas to software, that's changing. Sumitha, you want to add something to that? Will we keep Biju quiet for some time?
So, since I come in from the outside in, right, where I work with customers all the time, idea to business are two different things, right? Idea to make a business out of an idea doesn't always necessarily depend on speed. While speed is an important component of it, timing and what problem you're solving becomes very, very critical. So to assume that a zero effort, zero code, or low effort, that what Aditi said, is going to be the next unicorn is probably a big assumption, right? Because it doesn't necessarily always mean. And now having talked to customers, right now in the market, largely when I look at India customers or global customers, everybody is looking at AI still as an efficiency tool to look at effort reduction, to give me more reliability, predictability. But are they really making AI a co-worker in decision making? Sometimes, but still more from a verified perspective, not so much from an intuitive perspective. So that's where I would draw the parallel from an outside in lens.
Are customers also very excited about?
Of course, it's a new shiny toy. Everybody's excited about it. There is no lack of excitement and there's no lack of possibilities. But what is the governance around it? Like, I worry if my bank is going to, which has all my private data, is going to adopt an AI model which does not have enough governance. Right? It's not easy. I don't think I want things that are very, very personal to me and hard-earned to be susceptible to any crime. And we've seen an increase of that. So I think it is exciting, definitely in terms of possibilities, but how do we kind of, like we did with the web world and when we moved into the cloud and everything else, it has governance and security around this has to evolve.
And that's a very crucial point. We'll touch upon security soon. So what I want to ask Biju before we talk about security is, we're talking about a lot of exciting things that can be created, essentially a lot of value that can be created very fast. But the big question still remains, everybody is excitedly creating new things and they think they're creating value. The question I want to ask you is, whose value is it anyway? In the sense, are you really creating value? Do you own it, or is there something that the audience should know that we haven't thought through?
So thank you. I'll put some full stops there to the creativity journey. So fundamentally, when you create something, there is a protection given by the law, which is copyright law. When you create a piece of software or code. Similarly, if you clear the requirements of a patent, you get a patent on that subject matter, typically. But if you see, if there is no human involved in this process, you don't get a copyright protection, you don't get a patent protection. So that is the shift which I am seeing. So unless there is, so it can't be no person, no human involved. And if you look at the regulatory process also, the EU AI Act and all those places, there has to be some human in that loop. So that is required for various purposes. For moral purposes, it could be regulatory processes. So that no human involved thing could be looked at from a different perspective. There has to be human in the loop. Now let's look at any entity. What is the biggest asset they have? Their biggest asset is their IP. So in this process, there is no IP created because there is no human. Only human can get a copyright protection or a patent protection or any IP for that. So that is the first part of it. Now let's look into the other regulatory aspect. What you said, governance and regulation. Am I happy as in the whole process as an individual that products and services are being offered to me by banks or any service provider where my personal data is being used or anything which is related to me, because we have data protection laws across the globe. If you talk about US, there is state-wise laws. In Europe, there is state countries special GDPR is there. In India also, we have data protection laws, which is the DPDP. So all these things, how do we? And the other problem, which when we look at from an open source perspective, also is that what is the license? So I don't know. Recently, you have seen many of these AI platforms not complying with the regulatory requirements. So when you use typically a code or a software, you will look into, as a human, you will look into which license it was under, what is the copyright obligation, what are my other obligations, legal obligations. But here, when AI is doing it, who takes the responsibility? The AI cannot take responsibility. So, whether it is the individual behind, like the company which is going to take the responsibility, or if the company is selling it or making it for somebody else, a different entity, in the typical service setup, who takes liability? Who will be responsible in this group? If you see any of these AI platforms, the normal liability of them is limited to $1,000. Typically. If you take an enterprise version, the liability might be little high. So let's look into from all these perspectives. Owning IP. What happens when the customer is using all this code which has been developed by these platforms? Who takes the liability? Who owns the IP? Because this platform might have, this LLM would have taken code from various places, whether permission was taken. Because there are various obligations under different licenses. There are incompatibility in the licenses. Like in the copyleft license, like GPL 123, there is a difference from an MIT license. So the obligations are also different. So and today what is happening also is, yesterday only, what we saw is people using all licenses from different places and changing the license itself. So if it is under MIT or it's under GPL, they are turning it to other licenses. So this all creates problems. And then in the whole supply chain of software, how this will affect, because we don't know what is the traceability. Who created this? Who supplied this in the supply chain? So let's say you are an automobile company. Your one, tier 5 vendor provided this piece of code which was created by AI. It is ultimately the auto major which will be sued, because people don't know who are the players, who are the vendors across the globe. For the same product, for the same software, for the North American region, it would be one vendor. For the India region or the Asia region, there will be another vendor. So it is quite difficult to get into this aspect from a legal and a regulatory perspective.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions around that.
I have something that actually was a very interesting thought. So that's something I was coming across as well, right? Like a few years back when I open sourced something and I said that, okay, this shouldn't be used for commercial purposes, but use it for your educational thing or your own company. And then these models were trained on like everything on the web, right? Something that you might want others to use, something that you don't want others to use, but just want to share with the world. And all of that is now sitting. So suppose all of my logic, which I open sourced for non-business purposes, is now sitting inside the model. And now when someone queries, the model gets that information out of whatever it was trained on. So you cannot even know, there's no backlink that, okay, my repository was fed to the model and this is like coming from it, because all of that knowledge is condensed into weights. So you cannot really say for sure that this is where it is coming from. And that's happened to all the data on internet for that matter, like most of it, which people it's just a GitHub like file. A license is just a file. While training on all the code files, does it actually treat the license file differently and then make sure that okay, I shouldn't train this repo on it? Like I don't know. So I think that's the thing that we're running into for sure.
I think it's very interesting. I was looking at there are ideas around somebody building companies for this. So I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Okay, so we'll come back to the same thread after some time. There's something else I want to bring in. We were talking about value earlier. So with software becoming so fast and it's so inexpensive to produce now, we're even looking at just like we deal with hardware boxes where we don't troubleshoot, we just, if something doesn't work, we remove it and then plug it into the data center. Software is also becoming like that, where the other day Karrtik and me were talking about the way we make releases now. Every time we make a release, is it really a new release or are you creating new software directly? So even those changes, when software becomes so inexpensive to produce, right? How do you make sure that the value remains? The only way to make sure that the value remains is to make the software trustworthy, make the software something that users can rely on. There's a big aspect there to make the software trustworthy and something that can be relied on. Maybe Aditi, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I heard it in a recent conference where they made the analogy with how watches were produced. So, smartwatch, like typical analog watches, anyone can manufacture it. It's the same logic, right? So today it has happened to software that people can create really fast. Logic or IP or the lack of algorithms is not an issue. It's very easy to create software, but then what becomes important for reachability is A, distribution, and B, the trust. So more and more human, like you have to just humanize the whole thing, just like watches got sold, right? There was a brand that they trusted and it came with certain certainty or trust. So I think something similar would happen to software where people relationship or your distribution would actually matter way more than what's inside the software.
So what are some of the ingredients of trust? What would make a software trustworthy?
That's a good question. I come from a security background too. So for me, it is mostly like, okay, it runs, but then is there enough verifiability of it? Is it actually reliable? Is it actually scalable? What's the downtime of it? Where is the data going? There's a lot of things around sovereignty that your data doesn't go into an external portal. You rather have, like in security especially, we are shifting towards where we are going more and more on-prem deployments, and that is done. That's a lot of work for us, but we do it just because of the trust. So I think those are the angles that come around. Like it's not unknown that LLM has a huge data leakage risk, and if you hook on the decisions of LLM, it can cause huge business risk. So how do you keep it accountable? And that is still something which is not set in stone. I think we are just all building and figuring it out on the way.
Yeah. So I have something to add on this. So I'm part of a global community called as Open Chain. So what we look at is how do we create trust in the whole supply chain of software, and obviously with AI. So what we have done is we have created an AI bill of material. So what is the AI bill of material? What are the ingredients you are using? So which is the license in your AI systems? What is the version of the software or code you've used? So all these details has to be there so that there is trust created, because there is vulnerability issues. Today with vulnerability issues, there will be data breach. You could be, penalized. So how do you create this trust? As we discussed earlier, in the whole supply chain of software. So one thing, even in India, the CERT, that is the Computer Emergency Response Team, has come out with guidelines. It is not mandatory for you to apply, but they have come out with AI bill of material. So that would be, I think, because ultimately everybody in the supply chain needs trust. So one factor would be this, that we have AI bill of materials. You have the whole visibility of the whole software stack you are using. Whether it is AI, then you have the AI bill of material. Whether it is software, then the software bill of material. So from that, at least an assurance is given. Okay, these are the things, and let's say there is a vulnerability issue. You can see which version of the software does we should use, which was the license. So all those issues could be, to some extent, taken care of.
Okay. So I'll come to you, Sumitha, on that. we were talking about how to build trust. So Aditi spoke about security. Biju spoke about AI bill of materials. I didn't want to miss one aspect here. Karrtik works on a lot of algorithms that focus on verifiability. Maybe Karrtik, you want to add a few seconds on how does what you do affect trust of a software?
Yeah. Just to throw some numbers, I think right now we are going through a phase where everybody thinks context is the king. How many of you think right now context is what we are working on, right? Everybody thinks, okay, if we give the right context, the job is well done, right? I mean, we are almost done. And we have now new ways of giving context. We show one context at a time, reveal one at a time. So many things that have come out, right? Recent study has shown that even if once you have perfect context, the instruction following capabilities of even the frontier models is close to only 30-40%. What I mean by that is, I have an 8-year-old at my home. I give him a lot of instructions, perfect context in different ways. Morning, afternoon, evening, chips in the pocket, reminders, lot of things. But he still forgets to do things. He still misses to do things. Sometimes he does things in a half-baked manner, right? So what I believe is going to happen is that the shift is going to happen where all of us, it's not really about zero effort, I believe. I think there's a paradigm shift where all of us have to become good verifiers, good judges of what AI is producing. I think one way to first of all introduce trust is, first of all, we need to bring more transparency as to what we have verified. I think we have to go through a phase where now we ask, I mean, if at all in last 25-30 years there was a need of first principle thinking, it is now. I think now with all AI producing a lot of output, some useful, some not so useful, etc. I think the first principle thinking, how do we verify the outputs coming out of AI, whether it has followed the instructions that we have given. I think that's going to be the role that a lot of us have to kind of shift from a paradigm. I don't think it's a zero effort, it's a paradigm shift in my opinion, where all of us have to play a different role. And how the trust can come in, first I think we need to build a confidence for ourselves, right? I think right now, we are still going through a phase where, let's face it, the AI is pushing us in the right direction. AI is putting human in the right force that now show me more value. I am doing 80% of your work which you deemed as the major work in so many years. All the efforts on coding, etc. I am able to now do very fast. What value are we ready to bring to the table? I think that's where the spotlight is. Now what is that going to do? It is going to expose all other bottlenecks. What it also means, while coding will go at maybe super fast speed, the other bottlenecks, the highlight will now be on, okay, why human is not able to decide. I am able to give 10 showcases or 10 demos. The traditional agile of a weekly release, weekly showcase. Now in a day I can show you 3 showcases. Can you make up your mind now what you actually want? Can your stakeholders make more faster decision making? Right? So I think this is where the focus is going to be. I think the question that we need to ask ourselves, was or is coding really the bottleneck? In my experience in 25 years in the software industry, coding is only one part of the puzzle. I think the question that we need to ask is, okay, where is the bottleneck and how do we, all other parts have to now move faster?
That's an interesting point. So the speed is affecting the way the bottlenecks are, and the bottlenecks is shifting elsewhere. I think the real thing that is a bottleneck is not shifting. The real bottlenecks are coming out. It was never the code. We made code faster, but the bottlenecks remain. It's just like all the flyovers that you travel through in Bangalore, just to discover where the real bottleneck was. Right? Before the flyover, it was at least staggering you till you reach the real bottleneck. Sumitha, want you to touch on 2 things. One is we were talking about trust, right? We were talking about how to build trust in terms of making sure what we're building is doing the right thing and making sure it's secure. But when you talk,
fundamentally, the decision makers whom we are dealing with are still human based. they are not agent-based. I don't know. I think I can't foresee into the future of 20 years if people will buy from agents. We do simple buys from agents, without doubt. But at an enterprise business level, am I going to buy something an agent recommends to me? I think at right now, my opinion is 50-50. I don't think everybody is going to be doing it depending on the risk play of the person. And if it's a statutory body, the chance of that happening is going to be much smaller. Right? So for me, I think the human is the trust. The human is the one which connects the speed at which things can be done more predictably, proactively. But if something goes wrong, I think you will still need a person to come and fix or blame, for lack of better words, and that will unfortunately happen to the human. Right? So whether we like it or not, whatever agents come in and all that, if I have a bank which is tap has gone down, they are not going to look at which agents are running. They're going to look at who can fix it for me in the next few hours, and if they can't, then nobody is ever going to say something happened with the agent. They say you did not fix it. Right? So I think that part of the trust will continue to be in the game till we see more efficiencies and model shift. And Karrtik, I loved your point about the code was probably never the problem, right? And right now, probably we're at a phase where people in the hierarchy of an organization will realize their inefficiencies without having anything else to blame, right? So I think that's going to be like an agile stand-up mirror, which will throw them in their face. You should tell them that this is all happening now. You tell me, can you make a strategic decision on which use case you want to pursue, and do you have the data around that to make a decision, right? So I think that's going to be important. So I think the trust factor that the human being comes in will get morphed. I think probably we'll have to blend a lot of AI into it, but I don't think we'll go with it.
But if I have to just add, I think people in the audience might be thinking, hey, here are 4 people, 5 people sitting, painting not so great picture, or talking all kind of very critically about the AI. I think, first of all, I think we all need to acknowledge that I think there is value. There is definitely value. It is pushing us in the right direction. It is unlocking things for us. Now we need to ask ourselves, how do we make best use of it, right? And best use of it in many ways. I mean, still there is value where if you are building an internal facing application which has no safety risk, which has no regulatory risk, which is a greenfield application, which is an independent application, I think it's a wonderful place for you to expect great results, right? There's another place where, okay, you are throwing off recommendations, but the recommendations themselves are never going to be very harmful. You could build a very easy recommendation system where you say, okay, hey, you don't like this movie, watch this movie. But is there a harm associated? Probably not. I mean, at the max, you might end up spending 2 hours not watching a great movie, right? But I think the larger question that we need to ask ourselves is that there is a balance for everything. You cannot just kind of say that, okay, I'll use AI in a way where I'm going to get magical results everywhere. The question is, at the end of the day, in many ways, the human will be in the center of decision making. They have to take responsibility of what AI is producing, right? And still own it. I think the larger question we as humans are always good at, when we build something, we own it, right? Largely why coders have been very emotionally attached to their code, etc., because they have put so much passionate about what they have written, etc. Right? Now the other problem that I see is like now AI churning out a lot of code, that ownership is kind of going away, right? I mean, there is a lack of now dispassion. I mean, dispassion is coming out like, okay, I have not written the code, and then probably people asking questions around it. I think that's also another problem from a human developer's perspective that comes into picture. Like we want developers who are kind of wanting to own their piece of work. Now I think that also has to mentally change. I think these are a lot of other things that are going to come into picture. But as always, I think this is pushing us in the right direction. We as humans want to evolve. We want to ensure that we make best use of our time. We obviously want to kind of value our time, not do trivial things. We end up doing a lot of intellectual things. That has been always our aim, right? So it is pushing us. Now the question is, we have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable and kind of also develop additional skills to make the AI better and still bring value to the table. That's how I'm kind of looking at this phase that we are going through.
So we started with value, and then we spoke about trust, and then we brought in the regulatory aspects as well. We brought in security as well in terms of building trust, and now slowly we are moving towards the human angle as well, right? When so many things are changing, what is the role of humans in the loop? I will not use the word humans in the loop right now. We have a question on that for Biju coming up soon. But when we talk about humans, with so many changes, even we are adaptable. We need to start figuring out how do we change. Yesterday, I was talking to Sumitha. She had an interesting line when I spoke about AI models hallucinate. She said human hallucinate more, and AI helps you fix that better. Or said something like that. In the sense, we hallucinate as well, and AI helps you make it more predictable. So maybe you want to touch upon that part where we're bringing in humans now, and most of the discussion or focus has really been on AI hallucinating and how do humans verify it and how do we make AI aspects better. Now, maybe let it on its head and talk about how.
I think we always
AI
hallucinate it. It's just that it is getting exposed through AI. I think today the way we hallucinate is the way we create models, right? I think so. It's more openly visible how we're hallucinating. But of course, there are verifiers, makers, and checkers. So I think we need to use AI as a maker and checker for our hallucinations and the system hallucinations. And for me, it all comes at a cost. To add to what Karrtik said, I today don't think we're actually measuring the cost of AI. Right? I think when we objectively start measuring, everybody's in this bandwagon that I have to do this, otherwise I'm looking obsolete. But actually, if you start measuring the cost of AI and the return on investment on AI effectively, and it adds up to your bottom P&L, I think the decisions organizations will make, businesses will make on where they will use AI and where they will not use, I think will be very different. I think we're in the learning phase, so I guess there is some leeway when it comes to pure business. I think the lens will shift.
I think one of the reasons why the cost is not becoming a major factor is I think people are still not adopting open source models. They're still wanting to make use of open AIs of the world, clouds of the world. Why? Because the token economics is working for them. The tokens are pretty cheap. Now, whether they are going to be cheap forever, when Uber came into the market, a lot of drivers got attracted to Uber. Right? We also got a lot of free rides. Right? So right now we are going through a phase where I think somebody made a point, it's a toy that we have. I think humans have been known historically before arriving. I think if you look at the mobile phones in your pocket and hands, it has gone through a lot of change from where it was. And we have kind of, from a simple calling machine to now it is becoming a camera based system, right? So I think we have abused it a lot to reach to some good use of it, right? I think similarly this technology will also go through this phase where we as humans will kind of try to maximize every ounce of usefulness that could come, and in that process we will harm ourselves also. Still we have cases of digital addiction, RSI injuries, mental stress, distraction issues. I don't think it will force us not to use it. I think finally we'll end up in a phase we'll find good uses of it. I think we'll go from the layer of abuse to good use. I think that's, history is full of such examples. I think if you dig, I think we'll get a lot of good examples around it. I think we'll go through the same phase. I think we are in this phase. I believe it's for us to embrace this rather than being the naysayers or trying to say push it away, and ask ourselves how can we bring complementary skills to the table which will make life better, easier for everybody around us and for ourselves. I think that is what is going to be the challenge that will be thrown at us.
The only thing I'll say is every other revolution probably took a little longer in terms of cycle time. This in terms of speed is going to be much harder, which is probably where we're going to struggle to kind of draw the balance. I think that will be the biggest differentiator in my mind when compared to all of the technology revolutions we saw up until now. That's what I believe with.
Sorry, I was telling Srivathsa yesterday, I think now people do not want to do bug fixes in the code. Generating from scratch is much more easier, right? Why do you want to get into the code, find out where it is breaking, etc.? Okay, give another prompt, get some agent to do something and build some. But now it also means that now every other ecosystem has to also move at the same step. Think of like a healthcare application which has to go through HIPAA, and Biju might speak more about it, like has a HIPAA process, right? Typically, HIPAA process takes around few months time to get an HIPAA kind of a green tag, right? And you have to prove that your code is HIPAA compliant, etc., etc. Now imagine every time you give an entirely new piece of code to verification for HIPAA, then they also have to move as fast to say it is HIPAA certified. So now the bottleneck is going to move. Can the other regulatory bodies move at the same speed? Can they also just make of use AI and say, okay, I have certified for HIPAA using AI? That probably is going to require much more of AI, right? The AI in the current shape may not be very useful for something like a HIPAA certification. Now, how will that AI look like, which can also make the HIPAA certification faster? I think that will take time. I think if you had asked me last year, the code generation, I think it has made far major progress. I think we have to accept that. I think the outputs coming out of AI, LLMs, I think it has gradually, or even at the speed what Sumitha is making, I think, yes, I think the speed is great. I think now we are getting good. Now, how do we kind of make other pieces also move at the same speed? I think that's what the challenge is going to be.
And I think the key takeaway there is while you try to speeden up other parts of the bottleneck, there's a key thing that came out in what Karrtik said. It always has to be AI, human, or human AI. You can't make it AI. In the sense you can't speed up an AI outcome by complementing with the AI verifier. Then that can lead to strange things because you can't keep putting AI everywhere on the chain till you start putting AI buyers also, right? And then it doesn't
I'll just throw an anecdote. While coming to the conference, I was reading about a case study, a simulation that Anthropic did. Anthropic, the cloud people, like they deployed a HR agent which has access to employees' emails, everything. It ended up AI interaction we are talking about, right? It ended up blackmailing another employee, saying that they came to know that the person is going to quit or going to put in the papers. They ended up looking at the emails and putting in kind of a situation where they kind of forced or tied their hands not to do that. So that can also kind of happen. So from that angle, I think we need to ask ourselves, what is the best use? What data should we get access to? How do we put now? I think earlier the question came the governance part. I think the governance has to become a first-class citizen. I think what you need to now start in, how can I start with governance? Along with speed, speed is not the only criteria. The governance has to become a first-class citizen. You need to ask yourself, does speed also guarantee good governance? I think until we do that, I think it's going to be a largely puzzle of, okay, how do we see the value? And the definition of value also has to kind of then revolve around it.
We'll come to governance.
Yeah.
So, Aditi, question for you.
Yeah.
While you add to that, while everything has been going at this great speed, especially the human in the loop part for critical areas like security, right? It's not like everything is automated, everything is solvable. But I want your comments on that because security is closely tied to trust. Really, coming back to trust again. While we wrote about creating agents for everything, what is the reality in terms of making it more secure and contributing to trust?
Yeah, so like AI has been running a lot of code, right? Security as a process, like as a program, has already had challenges. We have not solved application security, product security for softwares even before AI because it required manual reviewing, understanding, doing consultation, doing threat modeling, then pen testers actually attacking the application and making sense that, okay, it is secure, right? And when a human is involved in reading and making sense of that code, imagine AI just generating hundreds and thousands of files. No one goes and sits through and read each and every one of that. Also because like we just discussed, right? It's not the code that you wrote. So imagine the difficulty or the mindset you have to enter when you review a peer's PR, right? Like, okay, where their head was at. And it was just 7 files. Now it is like 70 or 80 files at one go, written by Claude or Codex, and you have no clue what's happening. So when you are shipping code which no one has actually reviewed, which is happening with a lot of new companies essentially, they just have that cycle that they create a Jira ticket, we want this, and then AI agent took it, write the code, someone merges the PR, and they're good to go. And the security head of that person is like, I have no clue what happened. It's just a single person. It's like the whole company is just one security person, and he's like, I have no clue what got shoot. Like, we never had a process. The SDLC, where security needs was plugged in before, doesn't exist anymore. The whole shipping velocity is changed. So how do I make sure that it's actually secure? And the same is happening with programs as well, right? We have cases of companies shutting bug bounties because so many hackers are using AI to exploit, to create attacks. So the number of bug bounty reports that the company was getting, for which they had 5 security engineers to manually review and see what makes sense, what not, it just blew up. And the human-based system can't caught up. So now we sell them secure AI tools that, hey, okay, let us help you out again. You will be part of this equation anyway. But AI is being used by hackers, so AI has to be used by defenders. So I think that is the kind of thing that we're going on. But a very critical thing again is, okay, how do you use AI reliably for something as critical as security? What about AI hallucinates on or doesn't detect a security issue there? And that is where the verifiability angle come in. That, okay, if an attack, my agent usually, it does that. It tries to figure out your code application, tries to attack it. But then what is the guarantee that it actually attacked? You cannot ask AI to review its own result. If you are coding, try doing that. Have some test cases for your code and ask your AI agent, okay, have you passed the test cases after writing the code? I have seen multiple times when it just changes the test cases itself and say, yes, I passed. Right? So that is not the world we want to live in, right? And similarly, there's another example where there was a chess competition between 2 AI agents. And it was like, okay, who will win? And one just deleted the binaries of the other chess program, and that agent won, right? So there are just no rules. They're very hacky by nature. AI is very hacky by nature. So building that verifiability in a deterministic manner is a challenge that we are solving in security.
Okay. Thanks for that. I think we're coming to the importance of human again and again, right? And it's not just a best practice. It's there by regulation as well. Maybe Biju, you can talk about how how regulations are trying to make sure that...
So the only regulation today, we don't have anything in India except for research, guidelines on the AI bill of material, and some guidelines for the e-commerce industry, because also all the intermediaries from Indian perspective. But if you look at Europe, the new AI Act, they are the only jurisdiction which has come out with a regulation, and also with the CRA, the Computer Resilience Act. So both these regulations put together gives all the mandates. So today, it would be very well for any company in India who is looking at exporting their AI platforms or working on providing services to all these jurisdictions to look into all those directions. Because if you see other laws also, like data protection law, Europe was the first one to come out with the GDPR. Now we adopt the DPA is also on similar lines with the GDPR. So it will be better for us to look into these laws and adopt those principles in line with what the world needs. Because otherwise what would happen is the checks and balances will be wrong. And we should not be reinventing the wheel. So it's very important that we abide by certain standards. And luckily we have UI which provides certain guidelines. The human in the loop, the guardrails are there in the AI UI Act. I think most of the companies which are using AI in any form, we should be looking at those standards.
Thanks, Vijay. I think an important takeaway from what Biju said, which I want to add is, so far we discussed a lot about AI from technology perspective, what it can do, but if you want answers for a lot of these questions, whatever the EU AI Act covers, when you start looking at things from risk perspective, when you start looking at things from accountability perspective, when you start looking at things from human in the loop perspective, what is he or she accountable for? When you start looking at transparency, explainability, many times the answers evolve, and it's easy to figure out a lot of answers in terms of what is right, what is wrong, what we can do, or what we cannot do. And though we touched upon attention a few times, we could not pay attention a lot. And I'm sure, how many of you have been paying attention? Yeah, half of you. The remaining didn't know that I asked about attention. So I know it's close to the end of the hour, but we are open for a question or two.
Couple of questions actually for most of you. One question is the current generative AI started out with generative adversarial networks and attention is all you need. And there are AI marketplaces now. So in that sense, isn't that the future? AI, right? You mentioned you don't want to, anybody would think twice before making an enterprise buy from an AI agent. But isn't that the future? That's the first question. I have a couple of more questions, if I may.
Yeah, please.
The next question is about verifiability. I think verifiability, specking itself is intractable, right? Verifiability is also intractable. Therefore, right? In that sense, it's a very hard problem to solve, right? We have to at some point say, okay, this is what it is. We have to move forward. Where do you see going? We know that software requirements specking itself is not a deductible problem. Therefore, verifiability is never going to catch up. And the third question is for you, which is AI bill of material. I think the bill of material is very, very hard, right? They're never going to publish all the data sources. How are we going to even rely on what they publish? I'll stop.
Yeah. I will start with the AI part, pass it to Karrtik, and then pass it to Biju. On the AI part, we were talking about the chain of accountability, right? So ultimately, I can pick two links and say AI buyer and AI seller. That's in a chain. I just pick two links and maybe I found a case of AI. But when you elongate the chain, you will not find a pure AI chain. It's always, there has to be a human somewhere putting it across in an interesting way. If you look at security, right? Now, they say human is the weakest link. When you look at the chain of security, when you look at the chain of accountability, human is the heaviest link, right? You have to have a human who has to be accountable for what's happening. That's what even the regulations are trying to do. They're not trying to solve the problem of whether AI is talking to each other, whether there's a human in the chain who's accountable for everything that the AI is doing. Of course, AI can make decisions and can buy, but most of the times AI cannot have consequences. Only humans can have consequences. AI cannot get credit. AI cannot have IP. Humans can get credit. So you'll end up having a human on the way. Maybe for the second part.
10 seconds. So that what I meant by AI is, it depends on the segment you're talking about. Not all segments are going into that, right? So the commercial space is probably the easiest, right? It'll go to that model. But if I look at RBI, for instance, will it go into that space? Probably never, right? It'll always have a human because it's a regulatory body. They can't afford to take the risk. That's what I meant.
Am I audible? If I understood your question on verifiability, the question that you asked is like, is there a solution? Like, how much can we really verify, right? I think, first of all, I think we as humans tend to be a lot more critical while expecting things from AI. We ourselves make a lot of mistakes. Is it that we don't miss while building software? There are enough failure cases of humans having missed a lot of things because of which legal cases have happened, etc., etc. I think we make a great case and we are very good critical judges of somebody else. So now that AI is there, we are being very, very heavily critical saying that, okay, let's find all the mistakes that AI is doing. I don't think anybody is saying that AI is going to be perfect. AI will make mistakes like how humans will make them. The question is, are these obvious mistakes versus these are edge cases where things can go wrong? And are we asking the right questions of the AI, right? I think the verifiability angle will come down to the fact that are we just taking a back seat in this entire chain without asking the right questions of the AI and kind of saying that, hey, I have done my job, I give you spec, you have produced something, now I am not liable to anything. I think the larger question is, we have seen AI performing very well when you make a narrow behavioral requirement given to the AI, it does very, very well. I think the larger question is, how can we make things easier for AI so that we are also happy with the output that comes out of the AI? With the obvious caveat that it will also make mistakes. The question is, over a period of time, can we correct it? And can we make it more and more better over a period of time? I don't think we'll ever come to a state where say it is making zero mistake. I think that's a very impractical way to look at it. So to answer your question, there are some obvious glaring mistakes that is happening right now, and probably half of it is due to the way we are using it, half of it is probably due to the fundamental architecture of the AI in itself, where it is optimized for a next token generation. Now we are seeing that the diffusion models are doing better than probably the auto-regressive model. So people are trying out different, I think people are trying out Java architecture. So that's also evolving. What I'm trying to tell you, I think what needs to happen for this to become better is we all become a part of that entire chain where we bring more value to the table and we are asking the right questions. And that's where the first principle thinking and asking the right granular question will come into picture. Rather than saying, hey, do you think this is correct? AI will say, yeah, it is correct. It's obviously trained to be a very good servant. I hope I answered your question.
We have time for the last question. Yeah. So, from the AI bill of material perspective, so the reason why there is a need for AI bill of material is, let's say there is, in one scenario, we have not used AI bill of material. The products have been shipped in the market. There is a huge data breach. You have, if let's say it's happened in Europe, you have to pay 4% of your global turnover as penalty. So you might have made only, let's say, a lakh of rupees in the European market, but globally you made a lot of money. So that is one problem. Now let's look at the other problem. This AI bill of materials solves multiple issues for you. License issues, okay, vulnerability issues. And can you reinvent this after shipping the product? That's this. So this has to be done at a particular time. If you miss that bus, you can't do it later. So this solves multiple problems. Regulatory issues, it takes care of vulnerability issues. So that is the advantage you have with AI bill of materials. If you don't do it, you face the consequences. If you're ready to face the consequences, you do. Yeah. Yeah.
But just to add, I think I'm all for laws, governance, and kind of the bill of materials, everything. I think one of the analogies that I always tell my son is that, okay, when you are going out, you want to wear a helmet to protect your head, not because somebody is going to fine you for not wearing a helmet. I think that's the mindset change that we require. I think yes, laws are there, needed for the larger population to protect a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that we kind of go and do whatever we want, right? I think we still need to ask ourselves where we need to wear a helmet and where we need to make best use of it. I think that's something that I want all of you to kind of go back and do some thinking and kind of think what is the best way where you can also ensure you're getting the best value at the same time you are doing kind of the right thing with what it is kind of possible with AI. I think that's something that I want to kind of leave as an ending message as such.
Thanks, Karrtik. I think we run out of tokens and we need to stop here. We're not available after the talk. You can interact with us, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Hi, sir. Sir, I'm an engineering student. I have already published a research paper in the Indus Valley script related topic. I'm working on many more history related research topics, but my thing is, you have talked a lot about how security vulnerabilities and many stuff. But my question is, for a researcher perspective in history and in general AI research related topics, would you recommend usage of generative AI, especially Claude or other stuff?
We would avoid going into specific recommendations, but maybe when we talk offline, we can probably discuss.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much.
Just to quickly answer, if you want to make use of AI for kind of becoming a good search engine for you to kind of surface the right insights, please make use of it's very difficult for you to go to the entire so much history, data, etc. Right? So I think there's a good use of AI in any domain for you to kind of get the right stuff and then go deeper in it. So I think there is a use. The question is what is the right and the responsible use versus say if you want to generate every new AI idea with AI, then our human mind is not growing. I think that's where we need to ask ourselves, where is the next innovation going to come from? All the data, I think people have already shown that the scaling laws have now diminished. Now data is no more kind of giving it the scaling which it was earlier giving last 2 years back. Because there is no new data. The AI is consuming and generating. All new data is coming out of AI. So now the next intelligent model is already only eating AI's output, right? So humans have to start producing more novel output also. So from that angle, there is a good use and there is a not so great use as well, if that helps.
Thank you so much.